Okay, so here we go, everybody. We're back right on time, maybe a minute early. Wow, our very special guest speaker. Usually we call it our special lunchtime guest speaker, but he had better things to do. We had to do a little switch of the schedule. And so joining us today, what a thrill. We have not only the president of the International Motorsports Association, but the former director of motorsports for Mazda in America. I met John at Daytona a few years ago when Mel Kemper, who knew more people at Daytona than I did, walked by and said, "Oh, Andy, you need to meet John Doonan." So John, welcome, and we're all ready to let you take it away. And again, if you have any questions, just hit the little raise your hand button, and we'll break in and have John answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Andy. If you give me a thumbs up, make sure everybody can hear me okay. Is that coming through loud and clear? Excellent. You used the word special at the opening. I appreciate that, but I'm no special than anybody else on this call. I'm a fellow racer, and I think we all have a common passion that regardless of what role we play in the sport, what our involvement has been over the years, we all speak a similar language. Our hearts all beat to the same drummer and passion for this sport. I had the opportunity to be the grandson and the son of car guys and racers. Many of you on this call could probably say the same, that your baptism into this sport was through a family member or somebody close to you. Others of you may be that first generation member of the family, or that first generation person that has this passion. I'm actually excited for those who are first time or first generation, because we have an opportunity, or you have an opportunity as first generation passionate enthusiasts for this sport, to do something that I've tried to do throughout my career, is find out and identify that next generation of participant, that next generation of talent. And so I encourage those who are first generation to take up that role and try to find our next generation, because I think it's incumbent on all of us to do exactly that. I'm super honored that Andy asked me to be part of this today. I consider myself, again, a fellow racer, and so thrilled to be on, was one of the panelists, and what has over the course of time been a tremendous program. So thank you, Andy, and honored to serve with the other panelists. I thought what we would do today in the time that we have together is, I want to give you not a history about me, but try to touch on, yes, how I got involved in some of the milestones in my career, but also I think give a state of the sport and what I think as all of us, again, who are currently involved in one way or another, as a driver representing a supplier, a race official, somebody that's helping others get involved in the sport. I think all of us have a duty to deliver what the next generation of our sport looks like. So I wanted to try to give a little bit of perspective. If I can share my screen here, Andy, I thought we could walk through a couple of slides. Don't want to jump ahead here. Let's go up a couple. So, as I mentioned earlier, can you see that okay, Andy?
Yes.
Excellent. So as the grandson of a former racer, my grandfather, also named John Doonan with a different middle name, raced circle track midgets back in the mid to late 40s and early 50s. This is a 1947 Curtis Craft midget powered by an Offie. This was my grandfather's car. And literally about 18 months ago, I received an email from a gentleman who I had not met, who said he was helping a woman whose husband passed away sell some cars, and one of them I used to own. Well, working for an OEM, you rarely own your cars. So all the years I worked for Mazda and had that opportunity, I had demos. So my wife and I, after almost 30 years of marriage, have really owned only a couple cars. But as it turns out, he meant a different John Doonan had owned this car, and this was my grandfather. This car was in the mezzanine level of a building in Jacksonville, Florida, of all places, just up the road from Daytona. And as it turns out, I used to sit in this car in my grandfather's garage in Rockville, Maryland, when I was a little boy, pretending that I was going to be a next generation race car driver. But I was fortunate enough to acquire this car recently. I now have it near Daytona Beach in a little shop where I keep some of my cars. And that just tells you that the passion runs deep and the spirit of the sport runs deep. My father, also John Doonan, with another different middle name, was a Navy sailor, and also, when ultimately was stationed in Long Beach, California, went through his first SECA driver school in a Formula V. He then got moved to Great Lakes Naval Air Station in Chicago, and he took up his passion also to be a race driver. Mainly road racing, not the circle track midgets that my grandfather was involved with. Dad was involved in a small group in the Midwest called Midwestern Council, and also did some SECA regional racing. I was a track rat, so started out going to the racetrack when I was 6 weeks old at Road America, and then spent a lot of time at a little track north of Rockford, Illinois, called Black Hawk Farms. And for all those folks who spend a great deal of money on pit stands and these fancy screens, I want to show you the world's first pit stand. This was my perch at Black Hawk Farms, a 55-gallon drum with a properly placed dome. And that's my clipboard, my stopwatch, and that's my PR partner, my little sister, with a Kodak camera. But that's where I spent most of my boyhood years, on the pit stand, timing, lap charts, then moved into timing and scoring. Mom was the head registrar, so I tried to race to the mailbox on the way home from school to get all the entry forms that were mailed in to help learn the drivers and learn the cars. Later on, Dad, after going through driver school in the Formula V, built his first road racer. Was a 1969 Volkswagen Beetle, which, no joke, a year ago, I acquired the car back, and it's going to go through a full restoration so I can do some vintage racing on my off weekends. But you know, the passion runs deep, and in 1979, my dad was racing with a gentleman named Ray Novotny. Ray owned a Volkswagen Mazda dealership in Racine, Wisconsin. And several times over the course of history, Ray had his name on the side of SECA race cars. Most notably, a guy named Fred Fiala, who raced in showroom stock. He was a national champion in the Volkswagen Rabbit in 1981. And on the side of his car, it said Racine VW. And that was Ray Novotny. Well, Dad decided we were going to buy a new Mazda. This is 1979, the first year that the RX-7 came to the United States. So we took a train from Chicago up to Racine, Wisconsin, and we walked in the showroom, and there sat brand new first generation RX-7, white with plaid interior. And, you know, it sounds a little corny, but on that day, I fell in love with the Mazda brand. So from the time I was 9 years old, my mom, as of even this morning, was talking about it. All I talked about was wanting to work for Mazda. Obviously, we had racing in our blood as a family, so the real goal was to work for Mazda. For those who are in the market in the Northwest, you probably know this already, but Mazda as a brand got its start in the Northwest. The cars were imported. in the Tacoma port, and our first dealerships in the U.S. Were started in Seattle. And it was those dealers, and particularly the service technicians and the back end of the dealership, that really started Mazda Motorsports. There was ice racing, and there was road racing, and really that passion from those group of dealers is what started Mazda Motorsports in the U.S. Gentlemen by the name of Damon Barnett really took that passion and kicked off what was the motorsports department, supporting primarily grassroots racers. And then, of course, in the early 70s and on through the 80s, the IMSA program kicked off. So from the IMSA RS series, or the Champion Spark Plug Challenge, into IMSA GTU with the RX-7s, Damon really drove the program. And I studied who Damon was, and I wanted to become who Damon Barnett was down the road. Long story short, went on to college, had the opportunity to stay engaged in the sport, started doing some sponsorship proposals for guys that Dad raced with that went on to run in the RS series or run an SECA World Challenge. And so really had a passion, not necessarily for the driving side in the early years, but the business and the PR and the marketing side. And so at the end of college, stayed in touch with folks that were racing these cars called Formula Mazdas, and had the opportunity to get engaged with Gary Rodriguez, who really started Star Mazda in the U.S., had an opportunity to manage a series in the Midwest, and then also had the opportunity to start a little team in the Midwest that ran these Formula Mazdas, where I met now SECA national champions like Mel Kemper, and really enjoyed that time. But it also gave me the chance to meet people at Mazda and share my dream of wanting to work for the company. Long story short, again, Robert Davis, who's now retired, who at the time was Senior Vice President of Marketing and Product, asked me to come on and join the company. And after a couple of years in the Chicago office, I had the chance then to join the motorsports group. Because of what Damon Barnett had done, because of what Steve Sanders, Damon's successor, had done, there was a start of a really, really strong grassroots following. I had the great opportunity then to try to carry on the traditions that Damon had built. And for Damon, racing was a family, and I know you can all relate to that. But Damon really drove home the fact that when we were at the racetrack as Mazda competitors, the goal was to make sure everybody was out on track. That meant lending a hand when there was a motor change that was needed, lending a hand when somebody needed a part to get their car going, even if it meant losing to that particular competitor when all was said and done. So I really worked hard to try to continue to build that family atmosphere that became what Damon had always wanted in Mazda Motorsports. We then had the opportunity to do some things, as I talked about in the early going, to try to identify and help that next generation of talent. And we, as a group, sat around and talked about how expensive the sport was and what we could do as a group to help provide opportunities, scholarships, if you will, for young drivers to grow their careers in Mazda-powered cars. We had already the Formula Mazda series. Ironically, Skip Barber was looking for a new partner. Shortly thereafter, the Atlantic Championship needed a new engine partner. So things really started to fall in place such that the Mazda Road to Indy came together. That program went for 12 years. We provided about $2.2 million in scholarships every year to young drivers wanting to grow their career from karting through all the rungs of Mazda-powered open-wheel cars and ultimately to what is now the NTT IndyCar Series. On the sports car side, we had a very passionate group of racers in SCCA. We had, at that time, probably 90% of the cars in what was showroom stock B were Miatas. And they were all prepped at that time to a very similar prep level. So one would think that a group of guys at Mazda sat around and drew up what is now Spec Miata. Ironically, it came from the customers. They drove us to build a kit, to sell that kit through Mazda Motorsports for shocks and for exhaust and for intakes and for dampers and all the things that created what is now Spec Miata. Lo and behold, to this day, I think about 3,000 plus kits have been sold for people to turn a street Miata into a Spec Miata. Later, the executive team, as the next generation MX-5 came, wanted us to do an MX-5 Cup in the same manner that we did Spec Miata, where there was a kit that could be purchased. It was a do-it-yourselfer kit. Finally, when the fourth generation Miata came, Masahiro Moro, who was the president of Mazda at the time, said to me, John, we need to sell cars that are already prepared to go racing. It had been doing it in Japan for a while, a much less prep level, but he said, we need to do this. And so in the end, Morrison challenged me to bring what is now MX-5 Cup. We found a sole builder, and now to this day, they're on chassis number 260 for MX-5 Cup, which is arguably some of the best racing on the planet. In addition, we already had teams running in things like World Challenge, Grand Am GT at the time with the 3-rotor RX-8s. And then ultimately, one of my dreams was to get us back into IMSA, at the time, the American Le Mans Series. So similar to the Road to Indy, we developed a scholarship program called the Mazda Road to 24, which provided scholarships to drivers coming out of SCCA or NASA competition, the opportunity to grow their driving careers at the highest levels of the sport in World Challenge or in IMSA competition. Because of the involvement in IMSA and the development of what ultimately finished up at Petit Le Mans last year, the Mazda DPI, I had the opportunity to meet Jim France. For those who haven't met Jim, I hope you get the opportunity to do so. Jim and his family have done a tremendous amount for our sport. Jim is a racer to the core. If a race is going on, whether it's NASCAR, IMSA, or even the American Flat Track Series, which the France family owns, Jim is there or watching it on his mobile device. Jim asked me then to come and join IMSA, a second boyhood dream which unfolded in front of me. I am so honored to have the opportunity to carry on the traditions of the France family and the Bishop family, who established IMSA in 1969, and it's been an absolute amazing journey. Transitioning now to talk a little bit about state of the sport. And Andy, I suppose at any time, if folks have questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. But I'd like to start at the grassroots level. I am tremendously proud of what the SCCA and so many other grassroots groups are doing today. Programs like Track Night in America that SCCA has established do exactly what I was sharing at the opening, giving new people the opportunity to experience our sport, whether it's at the level of a race official, a corner marshal, a safety official, timing and scoring. We need to, as a group, as a racing family, do everything that we can to introduce our sport to the next generation. I will never forget the people in SCCA in the Midwest or Midwestern Council that taught me about flagging, about corner working, about timing and scoring, about registration, about how to run a proper and safe race event. And I think, again, it's absolutely incumbent on us as current participants to do everything we can to introduce the sport to that next generation. Obviously, SCCA has expanded its program in club racing, in solo, in rally, rally cross. So they have the most comprehensive opportunity for people to get involved in the sport. NASA, of course, has done a great job in their chapters and regions across the country. The other thing for me that's so tremendous is track days. For those who have been around for a while, the only way to get any track time was to go through a driver's school or actually be a licensed driver and compete in an event. The amount of track day opportunities that exist today, monumental. And so once again, we have an opportunity to bring folks that may not be fully baptized in the sport to a track day event and give them the opportunity to experience what we all have over the years. I would say at the professional level of the sport, on the IMSA side, we're currently experiencing tremendous growth. Right now, we have 10 different platforms that run with IMSA. Of course, the spotlights are on the programs like the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge, the Prototype Challenge, which run the LMP3 cars, and then of course all of our single makes, Porsche Carrera Cup, Ferrari Challenge, Lamborghini Super Trofeo, and of course recently the MX-5 Cup, near and dear to my heart, has joined the IMSA family as well. As most of you probably saw, we also had the opportunity to acquire HSR in late January, which we announced at Daytona. This move was an opportunity that I talked to Mr. France about back in 2012 as what I believe is the foundation and long-term participation in our sport. We plan to keep HSR as it is. David Hinton will remain as the president. All their employees are going to stay on the payroll, and we're going to continue to try to help grow the sport of vintage historic racing through this acquisition. So really excited about that opportunity. The other thing that we've seen, and I talked about the do-it-yourself nature of Spec Miata, the do-it-yourself nature of the sport at the professional level has changed quite a bit. The idea of buying a donor car and prepping it to run in what was the Firehawk Championship or eventually Grand Am Cup or the Playboy Series that SCCA ran. Because of the opportunity to have manufacturers build a complete race car and have it be for sale for customer racing has really changed the face of people's ability to get in and be on a level playing field with those they're competing against. And I have the photo up of a car my dad built in the garage with my little hands trying to assist where I could. I certainly have a heart that is in that form of racing, but with TCR cars or GT4 prepared cars from manufacturers or GT3 level cars or Porsche Carrera Cup or Ferrari Challenge, the face of the professional level of racing has changed such that the manufacturers are providing complete race cars for sale to worthy competitors, folks that want to get involved at that level. And it has, I think, put some stability in the sport. It's put stability in the competition such that the cars are all equally prepared, where most of the folks can focus on their driving abilities and following their passion in that manner. We also have seen a lot of rules convergence. The GT3 platform, which IMSA has now introduced as our long-term GT strategy. Clearly, that's a global platform, which now makes the cars and the opportunity to utilize them all over the world much easier for competitors and allows the manufacturers to support their customer racers. And clearly, we're 1 year away from global convergence in the top category, something that I grew up with in the mid 80s, where IMSA GTP cars and world sports cars were competing again with the same equipment around the world. I am so thrilled of where the top category is headed. We announced, as most of you probably saw, that we renamed the class GTP, bringing back a key part of our history at Daytona. And we already have brands Acura, Audi, BMW, Cadillac, Porsche, Alpine, Renault's performance brand that are coming back to the top category. And I can tell you there's a couple more yet to announce that we'll be adding to that portfolio. So I would say at the grassroots level right now, I'm really excited about the foundation of the sport and the opportunities that we have to grow it. I challenge everybody to do that and look at ways to get more people involved. I would say at the very peak of the sport, we're experiencing tremendous growth, not only in car count, but in the amount of manufacturers that are looking to commit and participate long term. So, Andy, without cutting it too short, I wanted to mainly engage in some conversation with those who are attending today and answer any questions people have. No question is a bad one, and really try to engage and understand what perspectives your viewers and your participants have on the sport and questions that I might be able to answer.
Okay, great, John. Well, let's start by having you unshare your screen so we can see bigger pictures of all the people on the screen. There we go. Now there's a picture of you in large, but I'm going to go to the gallery so I can now see everybody. Feel free just to, you can unmute yourself. You can raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hand if it doesn't get out of control, and engage John. And John, I want to start off by saying that, yeah, pretty amazing that you were involved with the Midwest Sports Car Council. You may be aware, you should be aware, I hope, that up here in the Northwest, we have the International Conference of Sports Car Clubs, now a 62-year-old organization. And your predecessor, Scott Atherton, took the driving school from the International Race Drivers Club. I had no idea. I met him a couple of years ago, and he says, "Oh no, I was from Seattle. I took the IRDC driving school." So, and we've always had this sort of kind of connection with the Midwest Sports Car Council. I know I've met some of those people at the PRI show and kind of engaged them. So, so we do have that in common.
Yeah, it's those organizations, in my mind, that really are the core of how the sport got started. No secret that tracks like Watkins Glen, Road America, even the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca started out as those Watkins Glen races on the country roads, Road America, Pebble Beach road races that then established some of the circuits. So, I mean, for me, there's no question that I learned the sport from those individuals that were operating that sort of local or regional organization. And my big fear in the sport, candidly, is that we don't have that baton passing opportunity to the next generation. And I just, it's incumbent on all of us to try to bring that next generation along to carry on what all of us have done for so many years.
Okay, and then the other thing that I made a note of, I said I'll just slide this in here. Yep, I owned a Mazda. I owned an RX-2, and it blew up. And Mazda had a program where they said, "We'll give you a new motor." So I took it down to Scotty's Mazda in Bremerton, and they put a new motor in it for me, and I just paid the labor, I don't know, $400, and I got a brand new motor. So I had a lot of fun with that car. Really hard. I mean, I'm not the world's greatest mechanic, but when you've got two distributors, tuning it up there's a skill there. Not something that I was particularly good at.
And that's what we tried to carry on, Andy, through the Mazda Motorsports Parts program. And I respect many folks. I know Roger Cadell and his son Andrew participated. Obviously, Mel. There's probably many others on the screen here that have had that program. And our intent was there was a group of racers running a car company, and we wanted to make sure that other racers had the kind of support that they deserved when they were out in the field, no matter where they were racing, with overnight parts delivery, parts directly to the house as needed before the trailer rolled out of the driveway. And that was the philosophy we used. Most car companies said they went racing to help sell cars. I think all of us were addicted so much that we actually sold cars so we could afford to go racing.
Oh, well, I see Mel.
Mel's got his hand up. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Hi, John. Just wanted to let you
So
know.
good to see you, Mel.
Yeah. Just a couple of neat things. I first met you in 2002, my first runoffs at Mid-Ohio, and we finished sixth, and great, whatever. But we were packing up to leave, and you came over and brought my sixth place medal that I didn't know about. And I mean, that's a small detail, but things like that, I mean, I really appreciate. And in 2017 at Indy, you were the first one to my car after that, and that was pretty neat. Thank you, John. My question really my question has
that moment meant just as much or more to me than maybe it did you, Mel, because as a young boy I was a track rat, and I wanted to know the drivers, and I've just tried to carry that on. And it was so amazing to see you get that opportunity to win. So congrats again.
Yeah, thank you, John. My question, you sent me a text with a Crosley Club Ford on it, and it said Crosley Pacific. Is it, do you still have that car? Do you ever get to run it? And was that Dennis Firestone's car?
So I'm so glad you asked, because I know you have a Crosley now as well. When I was growing up, I mentioned the passion I had for Mazda, and my dad was primarily racing sedans. He started in the Volkswagen and then a Porsche 914, but then ultimately the Mazda RX-7s. But this is in the era of 1978, 1979, and 1980. Those have been around for a while know that what is today Spec Miata, what is today Spec Racer Ford, was Formula Ford. And the field sizes at SCCA regionals and nationals were 40, 50, even 100 cars. And the variety of chassis, Lola, Crosley, Taiga, Merlin, you name it, that was a real passion point for me. So years ago, I always wanted to own a Formula Ford. I found a Crosley on eBay, had no chance of getting it in my mind, but after $3,800, get this Crosley. And once I got the logbook, found out it was Bob Lobenberg's first car. Obviously a multi-time national champion, ran out of the shop with Dennis Firestone, called Crosley Cars Pacific. They were one of many Crosley importers in the U.S. Found out the history of the car. Dennis actually did drive it at Willow Springs to use it to qualify for the runoffs one year. But I did restore the car completely back to how it ran in 1978. I do still have it, and have recently acquired my two other favorites, a Lola 540 and a Taiga, which was originally driven by James Weaver, and then later a gentleman named Tim Lee Davey. So if I can find some spare time, I'll come out and run one of the vintage historic weekends there in the Seattle market with you all. I'd love to be part of that.
Just one other comment. I raced up here a lot with Matt Kurdock, and so if you would just tell Matt howdy for me. And I don't know if you ever get to know his dad, Jack, but Jack's a great guy too. He used to make us lunches at the track, so he fed us all the time. So
that's a great point, Mel. For those who don't know, Matt Kurdock is our technical director at IMSA, a racer himself. Started out in karting, but then in Formula Mazda. And I think that's the other piece that is critically important for all of us to continue the tradition on. having us as racers, no matter what discipline we've participated in, either as a driver, an official, you name it, volunteer. There's opportunities in the sport for young people to find their passion point. And we need to, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but we need to do everything we can to try to identify that next generation. And I would say Matt is a perfect person to have as a technical director. Former driver, understands all the tricks of the trade, how to push the envelope in terms of the GCR and the regulations. And so it's really great to have Matt and his perspective leading the technical department at IMSA and setting all the regulations and all the BOP, which is probably the thing that keeps me awake the most at night is balance of performance.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
All right, Jim
Thank you,
Graffy's
Mel.
got his hand up. Jim?
Yeah, good presentation. And funny you mentioned rabbits and RX2s. I ran a rabbit in my very early days in conference production, and we would regularly beat the RX2s. We couldn't beat them on the front straight, but we ran them out of brakes, as Andy will probably know. Anyway, my question is, you're talking about the next generation, and I'm thinking of next generation of automobiles, because we're on the cusp of going in, major transition for our power plants, et cetera. And SCCA at their national convention had a presentation from some folks there that are working on putting together a program, and I hate to call it a program of electric cars, but they're trying to, see what's there, what's out there, what's going to happen, how do we integrate this in successfully without going out and trying to invent the wheel for the world and have them all come. They're going to have the folks invent the wheel for us and then say how we can integrate it in and how we can kind of control it. So I'm just interested in your perspective, especially from the manufacturer's side of being able to do that.
Tremendous point, Jim, and I'm really glad you asked. So for those who don't know, there's 18 automakers that choose to race in IMSA, whether that's a single make or in Michelin Pilot Challenge or in the WeatherTech Championship. Obviously, each of these automakers has a product cycle plan. They've got a powertrain cycle plan. And that's what's been a really neat opportunity for me coming from being a manufacturer representative to the championship, to try to remember that we need to continue to be the heartbeat of the auto industry when we're competing on track, giving the manufacturers an opportunity to bring a particular nameplate, a particular engine, or a particular platform to the racetrack as part of their marketing initiatives. And so much like we have stayed on in tune with the manufacturers on the ICE or particular future fuels, we've had to stay in touch with them around what their plans are around hybrid or electrification. Most of those who follow the sport at the highest levels next year will be integrating a common hybrid system into the top level prototypes. This is a system developed by Bosch, Williams Engineering, and X-Track. So all of the cars that come will be custom bodywork or a custom aero package, an individual engine chosen by the manufacturer, but each car will have this common hybrid system plugged in. That's a step towards what you mentioned, Jim. At the same time, we've been in constant working groups with the OEMs to talk about electrification. I had the opportunity last July to go to a Formula E race, which obviously is a whole new take on our sport. I enjoyed it. The experience was great. But one of the things that I am concerned about long term, and if you asked Jim France if he were sitting here, what he's concerned about is that we're still in the entertainment business. So we want to make sure that whatever we do in terms of electric racing continues to be captivating for our audience, both our current audience, all of us who've been in the sport for so long, and those who are new to auto racing and being a fan of the sport. So I can assure you, we've looked at that. We continue to look at it. I could see it coming to IMSA at some point with no commitment in a single make format, a sprint race format. I do believe the cars probably biggest benefit would be if they were consumer identifiable. if they were road car looking, in my opinion. Yes, Formula E cars are really sleek. We could put an electric motor in a prototype, but I think if we position it in a manner where they're consumer production-based vehicles, I think that is going to have the biggest impact on helping the automakers continue to use it as a marketing tool.
Okay, thank you. That was great. Jim, did you need a follow on, or has that got it?
Push the right button. No, that's got it. I guess showroom stock electric.
I just want to make sure we might need to have a rock concert going on at the same time the cars are on track, because I know when I was in Brooklyn for Formula E, I heard a lot of carbon fiber breaking when they were touching each other, and a lot of Michelin tires making noise with the pavement. So I think we want to make sure we got an entertainment tool there too.
Okay, well, Tim Osborne, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, if you need a Crossley Pacific sticker, I've got
I
the left and
love
right
it.
side. So
yeah, Mel, give me a couple of those.
So I had a question, and it may be slightly out of your area, maybe. It seems like the single seater feeders series has been confused in the States for a long time. Do you have any insights or views into how, where that's going? Is it dying? Is it going to be European drivers from here on out, or do you think there's a future?
Well, I love the question, Tim, and it's right. Also near and dear to my heart. When we started the Mazda Road to Indy, and we were able to operate that for 12 years, that was our goal, was to try to bring it together. If you start out in karting, there's the WKA, there's Rotax, there's the IKF, there is SCUSA, there's all these organizations nationwide. And unfortunately, there's a lot of politics involved. Anybody know about politics in racing? Yeah. Okay. Well, our goal was to try to bring those groups together. And I can tell you, I'm not sure I was successful in that regard, but we did offer up, a scholarship program to get karters into, at the time, what was USF 2000. Dan Anderson has done a tremendous job putting a lot of his own resources personally into trying to do the same thing, bring it together. That's now changed to Indy Pro 2000. And then, of course, what was Star Mazda is also a Pro Series level, then Indy Lights. So I think we got to continue to work at it. I'm worried about it a little bit, to be honest. The now F4 and F3 championships, which are global platforms, obviously are in the U.S. The SCCA sanctions those now. I think they're important, but I, again, don't want us to lose the continuity of giving young talent, especially young American talent, the opportunity to grow their career. Dan Anderson still has the Road to Indy, but we do need, and we put a lot of resources, as I said, about $2.2 million a year in helping that program operate, as well as provide scholarships. And I would be lying if I didn't say I was concerned, but there is also a positive. A few weeks ago, Kevin Harvick, yes, the NASCAR Kevin Harvick, reached out to me. That's one of the beauties of being owned by NASCAR. We have a lot of opportunities to share ideas and integrate. And Kevin's son, Keelan, as you may know, is a pretty successful up-and-coming karter. And Kevin reached out to me to say, John, I know you did these driver development programs in the past. What about trying to educate the parents about what opportunities exist? Because he said, I'm around all these parents, and they're just not aware of where to take their, young Susie and Johnny as a next step in their career. And when I told him about the different platforms in IMSA, he was pretty amazed. Even Kevin Harvick didn't know about all the opportunities. So once again, I think it's incumbent on us to educate. And Kevin and I have talked about doing a seminar sometime here in the fall of 2022 to just bring in parents to try to educate them on what's out there. So once again, incumbent on us. And so I appreciate the question.
Thanks a lot. That's actually interesting. I'll dig into that some more.
All right, Eric Schwartz. Eric, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so great presentation, John. Really appreciate it. So I come from the off-road world, but been a fan of IMSA for quite a few years. So I guess my question is a little bit more fan-based. You talk about rapid growth in IMSA, car counts up, everything looks great from the outside. You have obviously done a lot for car commonization, making the cars raceable globally. What else is IMSA doing behind the scenes to help drive that growth from a media standpoint, engagement with fans, etc.?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Really appreciate that. I think for us, as part of the NASCAR family, we've been very fortunate to have NBC as our new broadcast partner. Our viewership has doubled in the last 3 years, which is really special for the sport. We need to do, again, in this area of the business, everything we can to introduce the sport of auto racing to those who don't know anything about it. Our social media has become a massive tool to communicate. That's no secret, but we just surpassed 1 million viewers across all of our channels. That clearly is an opportunity. Finally, we have a weekly newsletter that goes out to about 250,000 individuals that have raised their hand to receive more information. But it's not enough. And just this week, I made a presentation to a major corporation in the U.S. about reestablishing a program I did back in 2014 and 2015 at Mazda, and that's a STEM education program. Probably from where each of you is sitting, if you drew a 50-mile or 100-mile radius, there's dozens of elementary, middle, and high schools. We found high schools to be the sweet spot, but we're going to, fingers crossed, reestablish our STEM education program and take race cars, engineers, and drivers to schools in market when we come into one of the race markets to try to introduce these young and up-and-comers, not just those who want to be engineers, frankly. One of the things that I think is important in our sport is the fact that there are PR professionals. There are folks that are practicing law in motorsports. There's people that, yes, want to be engineers. They want to be technicians. They want to be drivers. But there's about, the way we position it, about 60 different careers that you could be involved in motorsport just to be around the sport itself. That's something that I think not everybody thinks about. They think about what they see on TV as the drivers and the people that get interviewed and the engineers and the crew chiefs. But when we started the road to Indy, it was absolutely about the drivers. It was only about a scholarship to take a driver to the next level. And what I was so excited about and proud of and made me most emotional is the fact that people found a PR career or a radio career or a marketing or hospitality career in the sport thanks to that platform. So once again, I feel like I've overstated it, but education for the next generation for me is the only way that we keep this going.
Wow. All right. Great answer. And boy, I took a bunch of notes there. Hey, Will's got his hand up. Will?
Hi, I wanted to go back to your memories of IMSA. I ran with John in his first year in a Formula Ford, and he took us to Pocono and Talladega. The image of 51 Fords on the banking in Talladega is still in my brain. Standing on the at Pocono and having the national anthem played with all the cars there. We were at the big time, as aspiring.
That's right.
Daytona. But I'll tell you that the one I really, really missed is I towed into Bristol and it was pouring rain and the race was rained out. And I always thought Fords on Bristol would be a much better show than Fords at Talladega. And it never happened. I always wondered what the bull ring would be like with our smaller cars. So that's one I've missed, and good memories of John and Peggy and their boys.
I love that, Will. And I think, you know, sort of secretly with the opportunity we have now with HSR, again, you point out IMSA's first race was a Formula Ford race. And so there might be a really neat opportunity for us to bring that back. I see Mel shaking his head, and Will giving the thumbs up and approval. Might be able to try to do that with a Formula Ford feature, and expect all the passionate Formula Ford folks to be there. Roger.
Hello, John. I took a bunch of notes as you're talking. It's been such a joy to listen to your backstory, a lot of which I did not know. The biggest one for me right here, right off the bat, was that the Pacific Northwest and the Mazda connection, and how that started. I did not know that, but I just wanted to share again a couple of things. Number one, that image that you have behind you, and the growth of IMSA with that picture of that many cars getting ready to start the 24 hours of Daytona is an amazing thing. I love that. We were not the one that brought me back was your Harvick story with your parent education. Here I was, a dad with a kid that was 16 years old, and we were looking to get into some sort of form of from karting to cars, and we picked up a Spec Miata and went out and ran it for a year, and then went to the runoffs and were lucky enough to win it. And the folks from Mazda were always so supportive with the driver development program and teaching a parent how to be a parent in motorsports. that was a big deal for me, obviously. But the bigger question that I wanted to talk about and just get your feeling of, you come into the president of IMSA as the former head of motorsports with Mazda, and your reputation and your morals and all of that being so high that there's probably not been an issue. But how did you handle that in your discussions, coming from a manufacturer to being the president of IMSA, where you deal with so many different manufacturers, like you already mentioned?
That's really nice of you to ask, Roger. First of all, on the growth, we've spent a bunch of time in the last year reaching out to European teams, try to bring that same family feel to IMSA. So I think some of that growth is people realizing how they're going to be treated when they come over here. So we're excited about that. One of the things I promised Mr. France when I came was to try to operate IMSA in the same manner that his dad and John and Peggy established IMSA. And that was to give people an opportunity to go racing at whatever level they wanted to go racing at, however serious they wanted to race at, do it cost effectively, and do it in a one-on-one relationship with the sanctioning body. And I was pleased to know when I got to IMSA that a lot of the folks believed that, that already were working there, guys like Mark Raffoff and several others. The other thing I promised was that I would try to bring the perspective of being on the manufacturer side and not forget what it was like to be on the manufacturer side as I came into my new role. And that is, we needed as a manufacturer to be able to go racing, to be able to use it as a marketing tool, to not have the rules changing constantly, to not have the cost be driven up. And I promised Jim that I would try to bring that perspective and make sure that the other OEMs knew that that's how I was going to try to operate the sanctioning body. I think the other piece was, I joke about it, but balance of performance. For those who know, getting all these wide variety of sports cars to compete on a level playing field is nearly impossible. And so I made a promise to the OEMs that I would do my best to make sure that we had that level playing field. And I also challenged them to make sure that when they came to the racetrack, they were going to perform at their highest level and not sandbag. And I think it was Eric that talked about off-road racing. given the last few laps of the Daytona and the way that the GT cars were going after each other, we may consider an off-road series as well. But the long and the short of it is I tried to bring that perspective as an OEM to make sure the other OEMs knew that they had someone that had just walked in their shoes that was now on the sanctioning body side. It wasn't a we versus them, you know, those evil sanctioning body folks that put weight on our car or took away power or that type of thing. But we have a saying in the office, and that's IMSA is going to continue to be a cost-effective, entertainment-driven automotive industry marketing tool. Cost-effective, entertainment-driven auto industry marketing tool. And I had a little plaque made up, and each of the employees has it on our desks. And I believe that that is a stable way to carry on our sport. And so that's how I've tried to approach it, Roger, and I'm going to keep doing the same.
And it seems like it's been very successful. Just I'm the outside looking in, but everybody looks seems to be pleased, and the numbers are up. I'd like to turn this back around just for a quick second, back to the Mazda side of what you had done before. My son was one of the first in the production base side on the driver development side, and even though he was only there for a couple of years, not only you but all the people that worked for you in Mazda Speed were. Even when he went on to drive for some other people and do some other things, we would get emails and notes, and whenever we'd see somebody, Mazda was always cheering him on, even afterwards, after he left. And that was, and that just showed the type of people that were there, and you're taking that on and continuing on there, and we really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. Very kind, and please give Andrew my best when you talk to him.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think Hong Zhang has got her hand up now. Hong?
Thank you. It's great pleasure to meeting you here, John, and share this panel here is a great honor. And I really taken by your personal story, because that's how I feel all these years working at Snell here. It's very much a family feeling, and there's a lot of passion here. People who knew Dr. Snively and worked with him were working in the lab for many years. Gib Brown, the lab manager for most of those 25 years I'm here, he was a personal friend of Dr. George Snively. He joined the Snell Foundation because his daughter was racing a quarter midget, and he was looking for a good helmet. And Dr. George Snively said, hey, you know, not only I can tell you that, you can actually help making the helmet safer here. And that was his role, like the robot that I was showing in the lab, marking the helmet test line was totally created by him, because nobody tests as many helmets as we do here. And he found there were a lot of human errors because we have so many different size head forms and different standards, and the lines go all over the place. They just very hard to eliminate those errors. And he built a robot, and it really simplified and standardized that operation. And I appreciate also you sharing all these grassroots organizations and IMSA's work on education. I hope I can get contact with you offline later to get in touch with the key people in IMSA and other organizations over the years. I have been in contact with NASA and SCCA, and not many other grassroots organizations like Andy has invited Snell a couple of times. And it's really time we get in there in the front trenches and meet up with the people who can really benefit from the knowledge that we have to keep themselves safer and enjoy what they do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Mel has his hand up.
John, why do I feel like I should apologize for introducing you to Andy Collins 2 years ago? He corralled you into.
No, it's quite the opposite. I'm absolutely honored that I had the opportunity to be with you all today. I wouldn't have missed it. I am secretly in Indianapolis. My youngest daughter is a first-year student at Butler University, and with my travel schedule, we don't get a lot of time to be together. So if there's an off weekend, I'm going to try to be with one of the kids and my wife somewhere. And so super excited to be here in another town, which talks a lot about auto racing, and frankly, Mel, where you won your first national championship. So.
Yeah, just want to say thank you, John. Good talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
So John, as we kind of near the end of your hour, I know we could go on a lot more. I've got way more questions now about various things. I'm sorry that I picked up on a single line that you said about, oh yeah, if you haven't met Jim France, you need to do that. So now maybe I could get an introduction someday when I'm back at the 24 next year or whatever. That would just thrill me to no end.
Yeah.
And then I do have one other little question I'd like you to answer here maybe before you sign off is, so you bought, IMSA has bought HSR. Well, now doesn't that put you in kind of direct competition with SVRA? And how do you see that work? I mean, look, I know Tony, he's a great guy. I'm just interested in your take.
No, it's a great question, and David Hinton, the president of HSR, and I are going to do a video this week and send it out to kind of put some perspective around what our plans are. But about 10 minutes before we released our news about acquiring HSR, I was in the hallway outside the media center, and I called two guys because I've had relationship with them directly, and that first one was Chris Vandegrift from IMSA, who's run the Rolex reunion at Monterey for many years, and Tony Perella, who I've known because we started the Heritage Cup with the Miatas, which are now eligible for Vintage Historic, which makes me feel old. But our intent, Andy, and for anyone else in the Vintage Historic space, is to do everything we can to bring it together and grow it. And so in no way do I want us to be seen as direct competitors. My hope is that the vintage racers will choose the race circuits and the places that they want to come run and get those bucket list opportunities, whether that's with HSR or SVRA or whoever it is. We're all, again, a big family here, and it's to our benefit to keep it all together.
Are you going to have a representative at the Vintage Motorsports Council meeting the 1st of March?
So David is obviously a member, and was invited. Ironically, I'll be in Indianapolis that weekend again to visit with my daughter and my wife and the kids. But long story short, we may. I've been asked to come speak. I just don't want it to sound or be too soon. So we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, well, I mean, I've been invited to come. I'm now the past president of Sovereign, and the current president said, geez, I missed out on going to Indy because I couldn't the last time. And he said, no, Andy, you can come along. So I'm just gonna go. And by the way, and everybody else can just plug their ears, is the Vintage Motorsports Council is a drinking club that has a meeting a couple of times a year. So.
Well, speaking of Sovereign, I'm gonna look up the schedule and try to find a way to come out, and Mel, we can paddock together, and if we need to share parts, I think we got the same car pretty much.
John, that would be fantastic. And as I think I might have mentioned, or you knew, that we did have Mitch Bishop come up 2 years ago, along with Kathy Rude, who lives in the area. Kathy's a personal friend, and they were terrific. His book is absolutely outstanding. I read it from cover. I couldn't hardly turn the pages fast enough. And Gal, we would so love to have you come up. That would be terrific.
Well, thank you. Yeah, Mitch is a dear friend. In fact, the day that the news about my new opportunity at IMSA, I called Mitch And like I promised Jim, I promised Mitch that I would carry this organization on in the same set of core values that his parents had established it with the France family. And I'm going to keep trying to do that. And as always, Andy can put me in touch with any of these folks. If people have comments, feedback, I want to continue to make sure we're doing it right and don't claim to be the smartest guy in the room. So really appreciate this opportunity again.
Okay, outstanding. Well, on that high note, hey, everybody, if you enjoyed John's talk, why don't we give him a big round of applause to send him off today?
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much, Andy, for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing all of you at the racetrack, okay?
Again, John, thank you for taking time out. Go enjoy time with your family, and we loved it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
So for everybody else, we're almost exactly on schedule. So this is our 45-minute lunchtime. That just means that Andy's going to step away for a few minutes. Y'all are welcome to step away. When we come back, you can close out, or I can re-enter you back into the room again, whichever you want. And you're welcome to unmute yourself and chat amongst yourselves. You would be, of course, more than welcome. And when we come back after lunch, Roger Cadell is going to talk about data and integrating that with video. So with that, let's take a lunch break. Thank you.